Bodhisattva worship. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord dwelt at Sukhavati at the Jetavana monastery in the park of Anathapindada, with a great assembly of monks, with 1,200 monks and many hundreds of thousands of bodhisattvas. When the great assembly took place, rays issued from the great hell of Avicii, and on issuing they reached the Jetavana monastery. Everything in the monastery appeared adorned. The pillars appeared inlaid and adorned with precious stones, and pinnacles covered with gold, and in each house the doors were of gold and silver. Now in that assembly the Bodhisattva, the great being named Sarvanavarana Vishkambin, rose from his seat, arranged his upper robe on one shoulder, placed his right knee on the ground, and bowing with folded hands to the Lord, said to the Lord, "I am filled with marvel and wonder, Lord. Whence have those rays come? Of what Tathagata is this the special majesty?" The Lord said, "This is not the majesty of a Tathagata, noble youth. The noble Avalokitesvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, has entered into the hell of Vicii, and after having released beings there, he is entering the city of ghosts. Hence the rays have been emitted." So the Bodhisattva said to the Lord, "Lord, what beings are there in Avicii? Where no wave is recognizable, does he there teach his doctrine? Where, surrounded by walls and ramparts, the ground is of iron, blazing up with one continuous flame, and flashing like a casket of jewels, and in this great hell stands a roaring cauldron, and into it are thrown many hundreds of thousands of crores of millions of beings. As beans or pulse going up and down in a pot full of water, sweating and seething, are cooked, so these beings in the great hell of Avicii suffer bodily pain. How then, Lord, does Avalokitesvara enter into the great hell of Avicii?" The Lord said, "Just as, noble youth, a universal king enters his park of divine jewels in the great prosperity of universal kingship, even so does Avalokitesvara enter the great hell of Avicii. Nor again does he go in any other shape. When he draws near to the hell of Avicii, then it becomes cool. Then death's guardians are agitated in mind and fall into the greatest distress of mind, wondering what inauspicious sign has appeared in the great hell. When Avalokitesvara enters, then lotuses the size of a cartwheel appear therein, and the cauldron bursts asunder. In place of the fire, a lotus pool appears. Then death's guardians, seizing swords, pistols, javelins, maces, clubs, wheels, tridents, and other weapons, and taking the whole paraphernalia of Avicii, went to death, or Yama, the king of Dharma, and said to him, "Let the god first know this, that our sphere of action is utterly destroyed, and has become pleasant and full of all happiness." Death replied, "What is the reason that your sphere of action is destroyed?" Death's guardians said, "Let the god first know this, that in this great hell of Avicii an inauspicious sign has appeared. Everything has become calm and cool, and a beautiful man has entered, wearing a diadem on his matted hair, his mind filled with the highest friendliness, and looking like a disk of gold. Such a man has entered here, and when he merely entered, there appeared lotuses the size of cartwheels, and the cauldron burst asunder. In the place of the fire, a lotus pool has appeared." Then the thought occurred to Death, the king of Dharma, "Now of what god is this, the majesty? Is it that of Mahasvara, or Krishna, worshipped by the 5 great oceans? Or as some special result through a gift of power taken place in others of the gods of great magic power, and they have arrived in this region? Or has a Rakshasa come? Is it a rival of the great Ravana?" Thus did he stand there, reflecting, and as he looked with his divine eye, he was not able to see among the hosts of gods any other whose power it might be. So he looked again into the great hell of Avicii, and on looking in, he saw Avalokitesvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being. So Death, the king of Dharma, approached Avalokitesvara, and on approaching him he saluted the Lord's feet with his head and began to utter an excellent hymn of praise. Reverence to Avalokitesvara, to Mahasvara, to Padmasri, the giver of boons, the fulfiller of wishes, the giver of excellent sight to the earth, the consoler of the world, the 100,000 arms, with 100,000 crores of eyes, with 11 heads, who extends down to the marine fire, to whom the doctrine is dear, releaser of all beings, consoler of the tortoises, sharks, and fishes of transmigration, completer of the sum of knowledge, giver of favors, supreme dryer up of the Fichi, adorner of the grace of knowledge, to whom knowledge is dear, worshipped and revered and adored by all the gods, bestower of safety, bestower of the doctrine, expounder of the 6 perfections, maker of the sight of the sun, illuminator of the doctrine, assuming forms at will, assuming the form of a celestial musician, ascender of the golden mountain, whose doctrine is profound as the bosom of the ocean, who has attained the practice of the highest meaning, who is endowed with many 100,000s of forms of concentration, joy maker with anointed limbs, maker of heroic sages, releaser from the way of fear and the terror of the bonds and fetters of the heart, united with the non-being of all creatures, with a great retinue, maker of increase, wishing jewel, instructor of the way to nirvana, dryer up of the city of ghosts, maker of the umbrella of the world, releaser from sickness, sacred thread of the sacrifice performed by the serpent kings Nananda and Upananda, endowed with many hundreds of spells, who puts the thunderbolt bearer to flight, who produces safety in the 3 worlds, who terrifies yakshas, rakshasas, spirits, ghosts, vampires, goblins, having fair blue lotus eyes of profound firmness, Lord of knowledge, releaser from all the depravities, who in various ways increases the way to enlightenment, the chief of those who have entered the way of release, who increases the way of enlightenment with the thought of the support, endowed with hundreds of thousands of concentrations like atomic dust. Thus, Death, the king of Dharma, having uttered a very excellent hymn of devotion, passed 3 times round to the right and went away.